Right now, somewhere in your spirit, you already know something is different about this week. You just have not been able to name it yet. 3 days are coming, July 14, 15, and 16. On paper, they look like nothing. 3 more squares on a calendar most people will scroll straight past without a second thought. But heaven does not mark days the way people do, and these 3 were never ordinary to begin with. They are marked. Not by you, by Him. And whether you feel ready or not, something has already been assigned to those dates that your natural eyes cannot see. This is not fear-based content. This is not superstition dressed up in spiritual language. This is a sacred summons, and it deserves to be treated as one. God is calling for an urgent lockdown, not to cage you, but to realign you, not to shut you out of your life, but to shut the noise out of your spirit long enough for something eternal to be spoken over it. Maybe you have already felt it, a strange stillness settling over your week, a restlessness that has nothing to do with your schedule and everything to do with your spirit. If the last few days have felt paused, unsettled, even heavy, it is not random. Heaven is not being quiet because nothing is happening. Heaven is being quiet because everything is about to. Habakkuk 2 verse 3 says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie, though it tarry, wait for it. Because it will surely come, it will not tarry, an appointed time," not a vague suggestion, not a maybe. These 3 days, July 14 through 16, carry the weight of an appointment you did not put on your own calendar. You have been asking God for direction, for clarity, for a breakthrough that does not collapse the moment pressure returns. What if the answer is not waiting somewhere out ahead of you, but inside the stillness you have been avoiding? It is worth naming something plainly before we go further. A lockdown from heaven is not the same as isolation from the world. You are not being asked to disappear from your responsibilities or abandon the people who depend on you. What is being asked of you is smaller and in some ways harder. It is an inward posture shift that can happen even in the middle of an ordinary week, in the car, in the kitchen, in the quiet minutes before your household wakes up. This is not about geography, it is about attention. And attention over these 3 specific days is the one Offering Heaven is actually asking you to bring. Over the next several sections, we are going to walk through exactly what this lockdown is protecting, what it is producing, and who you will be standing as on the other side of it. There is one part near the end of this message you will not want to miss, because it names exactly what happens to the people who take these 3 days seriously. Lean in. Heaven has already started speaking. The only question is whether you are still enough to hear it. 1. Heaven keeps its own calendar. Time in the kingdom does not move the way time moves on a phone screen. Down here, time is measured in seconds and notifications. Up there, time is measured in purpose, and when God marks a window as holy, it stops being a date and becomes a doorway. This particular window did not appear by coincidence. Heaven does not operate on convenience. It operates on appointment. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." Not every day carries the same weight. Some days are ordinary, built for laundry and meetings and grocery lists. Other days are load-bearing. They hold something structural for your future, whether or not you notice the weight while you are standing on them. You may have already sensed this apart from any explanation. A pressure without a source. A sudden inability to concentrate on the things that used to hold your attention easily. An urgency in your spirit that does not match the calm on your calendar. That mismatch is not confusion. It is discernment. Something in you recognizes an appointment your mind has not caught up to yet. Think about Esther. She was not given a memo explaining why her positioning mattered. She was simply placed in a palace in a moment in a nation's crisis and told essentially that her arrival was not random. "For such a time as this," Mordecai told her, according to Esther 4 verse 14. That phrase carries more weight than most people give it credit for. It means the era chooses the person as much as the person walks into the era. Esther could have stayed quiet. She could have let the danger pass her by, reasoning that surely someone else would step forward. But if she had delayed her yes, an entire nation would have been left exposed. Her hesitation would have cost more than her own comfort. That is what is actually at stake when a window like this opens and gets ignored. It is not just your personal breakthrough sitting on the other side. It is whoever your obedience was going to reach. Picture an airport gate agent watching a boarding line thin out minute by minute, knowing the doors will close whether or not every ticketed passenger makes it down the jet bridge in time. The flight does not wait out of sentiment. It waits until the appointed moment, and then it moves without apology. That is what these 3 days are, not a flight you can catch whenever you feel like it, a window with a closing time. This is not a call to panic your way into readiness. Romans 13 verse 11 reminds us it is high time to awake out of sleep, not a call to sprint blindly into motion. Waking up and rushing are two different postures entirely. God is not asking for hurried performance. He is asking for realigned attention. The remnant who understand this do not chase the loud commands of the culture around them. They lean toward the quiet insistence of heaven because they have learned that obedience to timing moves faster than any hustle ever could. So before you decide these 3 days are ordinary, ask your own spirit a harder question. What have you been sensing that you have not yet named? Heaven rarely announces itself with noise. It usually just waits to see who will notice the shift. Some seasons ask for your effort. This one is asking for your attention. There is a difference between recognizing a Kairos moment and merely admiring it from a distance. Esther's story only matters because she moved once she understood the timing. Admiration without response would have changed nothing for her or for anyone depending on her. The same is true here. If you have already sensed that these 3 days are set apart, the next right step is not more analysis. It is a decision to actually clear space, literally and spiritually, for what heaven is trying to say. That might mean setting aside a portion of each day and protecting it the way you would protect a scheduled flight you could not afford to miss. An appointment made with heaven deserves at least the same respect you would give an appointment made with anyone else you did not want to disappoint. 2. Contained, not condemned. Containment feels like a threat until you understand who is holding the container. When God pulls someone in close and narrows their world for a season, it rarely looks like blessing from the outside. It looks like restriction. It looks like loss of momentum. But heaven has never once used lockdown as a synonym for punishment. It uses it as a synonym for protection. Moses did not go up the mountain because he had done something wrong. He went up because what was coming next required a version of him that could not be formed in the middle of a crowd. On that mountain, distractions died and instructions lived. He was not hidden from the people he would eventually lead. He was hidden long enough to become someone worth following. Exodus 33 verse 14 records God's own promise in that season. My presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. Notice the order. Presence first, rest second. This was not the rest of doing nothing. It was the rest of no longer needing to perform in front of an audience that was not ready to receive what he was carrying yet. If your world has grown quiet lately, if invitations have slowed, and your calendar has developed unexpected gaps, consider the possibility that you have not been forgotten, or you have been relocated to the mountain. Isaiah 26 verse 20 says it even more plainly. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For this is not the language of abandonment. It is the language of a parent moving a child indoors before a storm, not because the child is being punished, but because the parent can see whether the child cannot yet see. And Psalm 91 verse 1-2 offers the clearest picture of all. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. A secret place is not a prison cell. It is a covering. The difference between a cage and a shelter is not the walls. It is who built them and why. Think of a locksmith rekeying a door in the middle of a shift. not because the homeowner did anything wrong, but because something about the property has changed, and the old key no longer fits what needs protecting. That is closer to what this lockdown actually is, not a punishment for what you have done, a recalibration for what is coming. There is a certain kind of peace that only becomes available once you stop fighting the container. Fighting a season meant for shelter usually just extends how long the shelter feels necessary, because heaven rarely releases someone into wider responsibility while they are still resisting the boundaries meant to prepare them for it. Cooperation, not resignation, is what actually shortens a lockdown season. The moment you stop treating the walls as an enemy, they start functioning the way they were always designed to function. If relationships have shifted recently, if certain rooms in your life have gone quiet, resist the urge to interpret it as rejection. Divine separation almost always precedes divine sending. Before his public ministry ever began, Jesus was led into the wilderness first. That was not an accident in the story. That was the pattern. Containment before commissioning, quiet before authority. You are not being shut out of your own life. You are being shut in with the only voice that actually knows what your life is for. There is also a quieter form of protection worth naming here, the protection of your own perception. When you begin to understand containment as covering rather than confinement, you stop resenting the season you are in. And resentment is often what causes people to abandon a process just before it finishes forming them. If you find yourself irritated by the quiet, ask whether the irritation is coming from genuine discernment or simply from impatience with a pace you did not choose. Moses did not rush the mountain, and Noah did not rush the ark. Neither will you rush what heaven is currently building around you, no matter how loudly your calendar protests the delay. 3. Silence before the schematic. Blueprints are not shouted across a room. They are handed over in quiet, one careful line at a time, to someone who has made space to receive them. When God begins constructing something new in a person's life, he does not typically hand over the plans in the middle of noise. Noah did not improvise the design of the ark. He received exact specifications, down to the cubit, in a stillness that most people would have mistaken for inactivity. From the outside, it may have looked like nothing was happening. On the inside, everything was being drafted. Isaiah 30 verse 15 puts it directly, "In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength." That is not simply poetic language about relaxation. It is a statement about where genuine strength originates. Not from striving harder, from returning to a quieter center and trusting what is spoken there. This is precisely why distraction is so effective at delaying people. It is rarely dramatic. It usually looks like an extra scroll through a feed, one more episode, one more errand that could have waited. None of it looks dangerous in the moment. But every minute spent in unnecessary noise is a minute the schematic could have been getting written instead. Consider a radio operator slowly turning a dial through static, searching for the one frequency carrying a clear signal. The static is not silence. It is noise pretending to be information. And most people give up turning the dial the moment the sound becomes uncomfortable, right before the frequency would have cleared. Persistence in stillness is often what separates those who receive the download from those who simply grow tired of listening. Matthew 6 verse 6 gives the pattern its clearest instruction. "But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. And thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly." The secret place described here is not primarily a location. It is a posture of the heart that has stopped performing and started listening. A closed door in this verse is less about privacy and more about undivided attention. One practical shift worth naming here. If you have been waiting for a clear answer before you carve out quiet time, consider reversing the order. The quiet time is often what produces the clarity, not the reward for already having it. Set aside even 15 minutes today with no scrolling, no background noise, no agenda beyond listening. Bring a pen, not because you already know what to write, but because readiness to write is itself an act of faith. Noah's blueprint did not require the crowd's approval, and it did not arrive with a guarantee of applause. It arrived because a man had made room in the noise of his own life for something quieter to be heard. The same offer is standing open in front of you. This is also where journaling becomes more than a devotional suggestion. It becomes documentation. What gets written down in stillness has a way of making sense weeks or months later once the fuller picture arrives. Do not discard an impression simply because it feels incomplete right now. Noah likely did not understand every reason behind every measurement he was given, yet he wrote it down and built accordingly. You are not required to understand the full blueprint today. You are only required to be faithful with the line currently being spoken. For the inside is being rebuilt first. Nobody sees the renovation happening beneath the surface. That is precisely the point. Before God changes what people notice about you, He changes what only you can feel. Elevation in the kingdom rarely begins with a platform. It begins with posture, and posture is formed in private long before it is ever displayed in public. If you feel unusually stretched right now, emotionally raw in ways that surprise even you, that discomfort is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is frequently the sign that something holy has begun. Romans 12 verse 2 puts language to exactly what this feels like from the inside. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing is a stronger word than refreshing. Refreshing touches the surface. Renewing replaces the operating system underneath it. That is why old patterns that once felt manageable can suddenly feel unbearable. You are not regressing, you are outgrowing. This shows up in small, almost invisible ways at first. A relationship that once felt comfortable now feels like it requires translation. An environment that used to energize you now feels strangely small. None of that is instability. It is evidence of expansion happening faster than your surroundings can keep pace with. Ezekiel 36 verse 26 names the mechanism directly. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. This is not metaphorical decoration. It is a description of internal replacement, not internal improvement. God is not polishing what already exists. He is installing something that was not there before. Picture a seamstress unpicking a seam by lamplight, thread by thread, not because the garment was worthless, but because the shape underneath needs to change before it can hold what it was actually designed to carry. It is slower than tearing the fabric apart and starting over. It is also far more precise because nothing usable gets discarded in the process. Here is where this becomes practical rather than merely poetic. Pay attention to what no longer satisfies you the way it used to. Do not immediately try to force yourself back into old comfort out of familiarity. That discomfort is often diagnostic information, showing you exactly which parts of your inner architecture have already changed. Let the discomfort inform your decisions instead of arguing with it. You are not falling apart. You are being rebuilt from a floor plan only heaven has seen in full. And renovations by nature always look unfinished and slightly chaotic right up until the moment they are not. This is also the season to stop apologizing for outgrowing what once fit. Growth is frequently misread by others as distance or coldness, when in reality it is simply the natural result of a foundation shifting beneath the surface. You do not owe anyone an extended explanation for needing quieter rooms, slower conversations, or fewer commitments right now. Protect the renovation. Let it finish before you invite an audience back in to evaluate it. 5. The enemy does not need to stop you, just slow you. Warfare rarely announces itself as warfare. Most of the time, it simply looks like a delay wearing a comfortable disguise. The most effective distractions almost never feel like attacks. They feel like rest. They feel like relief. They feel like a harmless 5 more minutes that quietly becomes an hour. That is precisely the danger, because a direct assault would put you on alert, but a soft, familiar distraction rarely does. 1 Peter 5 verse 8 warns plainly, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." Notice the posture required in response, sober and vigilant, not anxious and reactive. Vigilance is not fear. It is attentiveness that refuses to be dulled. When heaven is preparing to release strategy, the enemy rarely offers open opposition. He offers noise disguised as comfort. When your spirit is positioned to receive instruction, your flesh is offered indulgence instead. That is why the real contest in this season is less external and more internal, fought in the small decisions about where your attention actually goes. Proverbs 4 verse 23 instructs, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Your heart, in this sense, functions like a gate. What you allow through it shapes everything downstream. That gate is not neutral. Every scroll, every comparison, every hour spent consuming instead of receiving either strengthens your discernment or dulls it. Jesus said something remarkably direct to his own disciples. In a moment of pressure, recorded in Matthew 26 verse 41, "Watch and pray, that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." This was not abstract advice. It was spoken to men who were physically present with him and still nearly missed the moment because their bodies wanted rest more than their spirits wanted readiness. The gap between willing and weak is where most delay actually happens. Think of a beekeeper standing motionless beside a freshly opened hive, resisting every instinct to swat or flinch, because sudden movement is what actually provokes the sting, while stillness allows the work to continue undisturbed. Distraction often works the same way. The moment you react hastily to every small pull on your attention, you disturb something that stillness would have protected. Here is a concrete step worth taking through these 3 days specifically. Name one recurring distraction honestly, not the obvious ones, but the subtle one that feels harmless. Set a boundary around it, even a small one, and treat that boundary as an act of worship rather than deprivation. Victory in this season will not be measured by a dramatic battle won. It will be measured by 100 small moments where attention stayed where it belonged. It also helps to remember that vigilance is not the same as suspicion of everyone and everything around you. This is not a call to withdraw from every relationship or every form of rest out of fear. It is a call to examine motive. Rest that restores you and distraction that merely numbs you can look identical on the surface, which is exactly why discernment, not avoidance, is the actual weapon in this season. Ask a simple question before each choice over these 3 days. Does this draw me closer to what heaven is saying, or does it simply make the waiting more comfortable? 6. What the furnace leaves behind. Nothing valuable was ever made in a room with no heat. Fire has 2 very different reputations depending on who is standing near it. To someone watching from a distance, fire looks purely destructive. To someone who understands metallurgy, fire is the only process capable of separating what is genuine from what only resembles it. Malachi 3 verse 3 describes God this way, "And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver." A refiner does not walk away during the process. A refiner stays close, watching the surface the entire time, because timing matters as much as heat. If pressure has been rising in your life lately, consider the possibility that you are not being punished. You are being refined. Punishment removes a person from what they value. Refinement removes what does not belong to the person heaven is forming. Those are 2 entirely different processes wearing a similar appearance from the outside. 1 Peter 1 verse 7 explains the purpose behind the heat. That the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. Faith that has never been tested remains theoretical. Faith that has been tried becomes something you can actually stand on, because you have already watched it hold weight under pressure. Or consider Joseph. Nothing about a pit or a prison cell looked like preparation for a palace. From where he stood, betrayal probably felt like the end of the story rather than the middle of it. But every layer of pride, naivety, and self-reliance that could not survive in a position of national responsibility was stripped away long before the promotion arrived. The pit was not a detour from his purpose. It was the corridor leading directly to it. What makes Joseph's story especially instructive is how long the process actually took. Years passed between the pit and the palace, years in which nothing about his circumstances looked like it was moving toward promotion at all. If your own process has felt slower than you expected, that is not evidence the process has failed. Some refining happens quickly, in a matter of days. Other refining takes seasons, even years, because the character being formed is meant to hold weight for decades, not just for a moment. Isaiah 48 verse 10 confirms the intention behind the process. Behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. Chosen, not abandoned. The furnace was never evidence that God had stepped back. It was evidence that he was standing close enough to control the temperature. Picture a lighthouse keeper logging weather readings at 3 in the morning during the roughest part of a storm, not because the storm is pleasant, but because the accuracy of that log matters more in bad weather than in calm. What gets recorded in your life during pressure often becomes the most reliable data you carry forward. The discomfort you are logging right now is not wasted. It is being written into a testimony someone else will need later. What survives a genuine refining process is never fragile. It has already been tested against heat that would have exposed anything counterfeit. Do not rush to escape what is currently uncomfortable. Ask instead what it is preparing you to carry. It is worth saying plainly that refining is not a one-time event completed in a single season. The picture of a refiner watching the surface implies an ongoing relationship, not a single afternoon in the furnace. If pressure returns after these 3 days end, it does not mean the process failed. It likely means another layer has been reached that could not have been addressed the first time through. Do not measure the success of this season by whether all discomfort disappears. Measure it by whether you trust the one refining you more at the end of it than you did at the beginning. Or 7. Smaller circle, larger assignment. Sometimes the room gets quieter right before the assignment gets bigger. Before God expands what someone carries publicly, he often narrows what surrounds them privately. This rarely feels like promotion while it is happening. It usually feels like loss, like relationships fading or invitations slowing down for no clear reason. But divine separation and personal rejection are not the same event, even though they can feel identical from the inside. David was not discovered in a palace surrounded by advisors. He was found in a field, tending sheep, overlooked by his own family during the very moment his future was being decided in another room entirely. Isolation did not disqualify him. It formed the private character that public leadership would later require. Psalm 75 verse 6-7 makes the source of promotion unmistakable. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. Promotion that originates with God does not depend on who happens to be standing nearby when it arrives. Even Jesus, with an active public ministry, regularly stepped away from the crowds he was called to serve. Luke 5 verse 16 notes simply, "And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed." If the most influential public life in history required consistent private withdrawal, it is reasonable to assume every other assignment does too. Authority that has not been developed in solitude tends to collapse under real pressure. Genesis 12 verse 1 records God's instruction to Abram before the promise could be fulfilled. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, "Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee." The familiar had to be left behind, not because it was evil, but because it could not hold what was coming. Comfort and calling frequently compete for the same space, and comfort almost always loses when the calling is genuine. Not everyone currently in your circle is equipped for where you are heading, and that is not a verdict against them. Some relationships were assigned to a previous chapter, built for support rather than partnership in what comes next. If certain connections have grown distant recently without a clear explanation, consider that heaven may be doing quiet reassignment work rather than allowing rejection to run its course unsupervised. This kind of separation asks for trust more than explanation. Trees do not produce fruit in shallow soil, and roots cannot deepen while constantly transplanted for comfort. If your circle feels smaller lately, let that shrinking do its quiet work. What is forming underground right now is not visible yet, and it was never meant to be. There is also a difference between letting a relationship go and pushing it away out of impatience. Divine separation tends to happen gently, through natural distance and shifting seasons, rather than through dramatic severing. If you feel the urge to force an ending prematurely, slow down, let heaven do the reassigning. Your responsibility in this process is not to engineer every outcome. It is simply to stop clinging to what is already loosening its grip, and trust that whoever is meant to remain will find their way back into step with you naturally. 8. Waking up what was only sleeping. Something in you is stirring that has been dormant for longer than you realized. Not every unfamiliar feeling rising in your chest right now is anxiety. Some of it is activation. Gifts placed in you before your first breath do not disappear through disuse. They simply wait, sometimes for years, until the right pressure calls them forward. 2 Timothy 1 verse 6 addresses this directly. Wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God which is in thee. Stir up, not acquire. The instruction assumes the gift is already present and simply needs to be reawakened. Elijah's most defining encounter with God did not happen in the earthquake, the wind, or the fire. It happened afterward in what Scripture describes as a still small voice. The dramatic events prepared the moment, but the quiet is where the actual instruction arrived. If your own life has felt shaken lately, do not assume the shaking itself is the message. Pay closer attention to what becomes audible once the noise finally settles. Romans 12 verse 6-8 reminds us that gifts differ by design. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering. Nobody is asked to replicate someone else's gifting. Comparison in this area produces only confusion, because your gift was never meant to look identical to anyone else's. 1 Corinthians 12 verse 4-7 expands the picture further. Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. Diversity here is not a flaw in the design. It is the design itself, distributed intentionally rather than randomly. Consider a translator standing quietly in a booth, waiting for the precise pause in a speaker's words before rendering the next sentence accurately. Speaking too early distorts the meaning. Speaking too late loses the moment entirely. Timing is not incidental to the gift. It is part of what makes the gift trustworthy when it finally activates. A practical way to steward this. Pay attention over these 3 days to what consistently moves you, whether it is a particular need, a category of person, or a recurring impression that will not leave you alone. That pattern is rarely coincidental. It is frequently the outline of exactly where your gift has been assigned to function. Stewardship begins with noticing before it ever requires performing. It is also worth noting that activation frequently arrives disguised as an ordinary responsibility rather than a dramatic calling. The gift stirring in you may not announce itself the way you expected. It may simply show up as unusual clarity in a conversation, an ability to comfort someone precisely when they need it, or discernment that surprises even you. Do not wait for a spectacular confirmation before you begin using what is already stirring. Small, faithful use of a gift is often what qualifies a person to steward a larger version of it later. What walks out is not what walked in. Transformation rarely announces itself with noise. It usually just shows up different one day, and everyone else notices before you fully do. Whatever shifts during these 3 days will not stay contained to the 3 days themselves. Revelation 3 verse 8 offers a promise worth holding on to as this season closes. I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. An open door like this is not earned through hustle. It is stewarded through obedience, which is precisely what a genuine lockdown produces in a person who takes it seriously. Deuteronomy 28 verse 13 describes the shift in position that tends to follow real surrender. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. Notice this is not framed as a reward for ambition. It follows a pattern of obedience, not striving. Positioning like this is given, not seized. Something structural changes internally during genuine stillness, and it tends to surface in ordinary moments first, long before anyone applauds it publicly. A response that used to trigger anxiety starts producing calm instead. A situation that once felt overwhelming becomes something you can actually think clearly through. Isaiah 60 verse 1 captures the visible result of this internal shift. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. Light like this is not manufactured. It is simply what becomes visible once something obstructing it has been removed. Nobody watching from the outside will fully understand the private process that produced the change they are now witnessing. They will see the fruit without ever knowing the weight of what was pruned to produce it, and that is entirely acceptable. This was never about being observed. It was about being prepared. Do not reach for old routines the moment this window closes, expecting them to carry what has just been formed in you. A version of you has expired, not because anything was wrong with it, but because it was never designed to carry what comes next. What emerges from genuine stillness typically requires new patterns, not a return to old ones dressed up slightly differently. What walked into these 3 days and what walks out of them will not be identical, even if the surroundings look exactly the same. That is not exaggeration. That is simply what happens when someone takes a genuine invitation from heaven seriously, instead of letting it pass by unanswered. One final caution as this season closes: transformation that is not protected tends to erode quickly once ordinary life resumes. Build at least one small, sustainable practice from these 3 days into your regular rhythm, whether that is a specific time of quiet each morning or a boundary around distraction you have already tested and found valuable. What was formed in 3 days can absolutely last far longer than 3 days, but only if it is carried forward on purpose rather than assumed to remain automatically. When heaven speaks with this much specificity, it is rarely offering something optional. Hebrews 12 verse 2 describes Jesus as the author and finisher of our faith, language that implies participation, not passive observation. You were not simply invited to feel something over these 3 days. You were called to respond to something. What has stirred in you over the last several sections was never meant to end as a private emotional experience. It was meant to become a decision. The world around you will likely never fully register what these 3 days cost you in obedience, but that was never the audience this was written for in the first place. Joshua 1 verse 9 offers the charge that fits this moment precisely. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Strength here is not the absence of uncertainty. It is obedience carried forward in spite of it, because the presence promised alongside the command is what makes the courage sustainable. There is no backup plan being offered here, and there does not need to be one. What has been stirred in you during this window will not disappear the moment July 16 becomes July 17. It will simply move from private conviction into daily practice, one ordinary decision at a time. That is what genuine transformation always requires next. You were never asked to feel ready. You were asked to be willing. And willingness, offered honestly, has always been enough to carry the rest. Wherever you are as you hear this, whether you are just beginning to sense the weight of these 3 days or you are already deep inside them, know that you have not been left to figure this out alone. The same presence that walked with Moses up the mountain, that sat with Elijah in the quiet after the fire, that met Esther in her fear and steadied her into courage, is available to you in exactly the same measure. Nothing about your circumstances disqualifies you from this. The invitation was never reserved for people who already had it figured out. Before we close, I want to invite you, right where you are, to pause everything with me for a moment of prayer. Let's bring these 3 days before God together, honestly, and without rushing. Heavenly Father, we come to you with hearts that are willing even where they are still uncertain. Thank you for the stirring that brought us to this moment, for the discomfort that turned out to be preparation rather than punishment. We do not want to rush past what you are doing in us right now. We lay down our need to understand everything before we obey it. Forgive us for the times we filled quiet moments with noise instead of listening for your voice. Right now, we choose stillness, not because it is easy, but because we trust who is meeting us in it. God, we ask you to finish what you have started in these 3 days, where something has been stripped away, replace it with something eternal. Where discomfort has done its work, let it give way to clarity. We do not want information alone. We want the kind of understanding that changes how we actually live. Awaken what has been sleeping in us. Reactivate gifts that routine has quieted. Teach us to steward what you have placed inside us with humility rather than performance, remembering that none of this was ever meant to make much of us, but to make much of you. Lord, protect our homes and our families during this season of realignment. Let peace hold every room we walk into, and let discernment guard every decision we make in the days ahead. Where fear has tried to speak louder than faith, silence it now. Strengthen the relationships you are asking us to release, and heal any wound left behind by seasons that closed sooner than we expected. Where we have mistaken your quiet for your absence, correct our understanding gently. We do not want to walk away from this season having only survived it. We want to walk away from it having actually been changed by it. As this window closes, lead us forward with the same presence that met us in the quiet. Do not let us mistake noise for progress or busyness for obedience. Keep us tethered to what you have spoken here, long after these 3 days have passed. We do not take this lightly. We honor it, and we honor you. In Jesus' name, amen. If this word met you exactly where you are, I would love for you to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's been sensing this same urgency lately. You never know who is standing right where you were standing before this message found you. Thank you for walking through these 3 days with me. May God keep you steady, keep you listening, and lead you fully into everything He is preparing next. Go in peace and go ready.